Welcome to my show. It's a guest here. Her name is Claire Wilcox. Mrs. Claire, how are you doing, ma?
I'm doing great, thank you.
And thank you so much for the time and the opportunity, Mrs. Claire. Firstly, you are an author. You are also an addiction psychiatrist and an outdoor enthusiast. Can you
Yeah.
please, Mrs. Claire, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mrs. Claire?
Yeah, so I'm a psychiatrist and an addiction psychiatrist, and I have done a lot of patient care in my life, so clinical work. I've also done some research in addiction brain chemistry, and then most recently wrote a book about food addiction. And that's something that's kind of an exciting topic because just from sort of a controversial perspective, because some people believe that food can't be addictive, but there's more and more evidence and buy-in that not all food's addictive, but some foods are addictive. So that's been an exciting place to be writing and working and exploring. And I have my own story too, where have struggled a lot with sort of addiction to over food and other things, and especially cigarettes. My God, they
Mm.
were terrible. So it's nice to be able to, sort of put together all this stuff, all this information into a package that hopefully will be helpful for people. And yeah, so it kind of came from like this intellectual place of thinking about it from a research perspective and have segued into writing a book that's, more accessible and practical, helpful for people.
That is the beauty of the conversation we are having today because we do know everyone loves food, but there are also
Yeah.
some certain things we have to understand about the food that we are also taking into ourselves and how we can also use it more better so that we won't eat something that we go back again and again and again into. And I also like to dive to your book, Rewire Your Food Addicted Brain. Can you please, Mrs. Claire, discuss more on the book? And from the experience you've had, do you plan to write more books in the coming future, Mrs. Claire?
Yeah. So the book is, yeah, it's called Rewire Your Food Addicted Brain. And then the subtitle, I guess, is what it's called, is Fight Cravings and Break Free from a High Sugar Ultra Processed Diet Using Neuroscience. It's sort of a mouthful, but it sums it up pretty well. And what it's about, I basically talk about how certain foods like high sugar, ultra processed foods, for the most part, and everybody's different. Everybody has their own trigger foods or foods that they struggle with. Like, not everybody has an issue with all high sugar, all ultra processed foods. It's not like a black and white thing, but that there's these certain foods that can be really kind of hook the brain in the same way that cigarettes, alcohol, drugs can, and get people, try to change the neurochemistry because the more we consume a drug, the more it gets our brain thinking like I really need it, and it gets increasingly difficult to let go of it. So it's this sort of vicious cycle, and the book is basically about that, and it tries to go into like I kind of matched the. I'd written a textbook in 2021, so I took information from the textbook, a bunch of science articles, research in animals and humans, neuroscience, and then I also collaborated with a podcast called the Food Junkies Podcast. People, they've done an amazing job of bringing in information, researchers and clinicians. I mean, just all these amazing people that all kind of believe in the idea of food addiction and married these two sources to kind of create this book, which is basically a self-help book. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, public health needs to change, but how can you today, with your issues, make changes? Because for me, I'm like, yeah, public health needs to change, but it's not going to change tomorrow. Like, it's not going to change in the next 20 years, probably. So, how do we help people get through this? So that's kind of the book. Yeah.
And it starts from we the people, we the humans that see these issues. When we
Yeah.
can do this, then we are giving a solution with the situation we have on ground. It starts from us, and that is the beauty of what you've done currently now regarding the food area when it comes to the food addiction. And that is why I would like to dive to the point of whereby people couldn't even believe that food can also be one can also be addicted to food, as the way one can be addicted to drugs or alcohol, as you said earlier. There's some certain food that could give us the spark whereby we can come back again and again and again and hit. And we need to let people understand that it could happen. We could definitely have a food whereby we can get addicted to it and will not want to even try to leave it. So many people don't realize the situation whereby food can affect the brain in similar to drugs or alcohol. Can you
Yeah.
please explain how this works and why it is important for listeners to understand this perspective, Mrs. Claire?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important because one of the things that you mentioned in your questions are so good. One of the questions that you mentioned was about shame and self-blame. And I think if we can in our cultures, we're basically told why can't you just eat less cookies? Like, why can't you eat less? Why can't you, why can't you have control over it? Just have one, that kind of thing. And um, and and when it comes down to it, some people just really have a hard time having just one. So a lot of people can have just one, so no big deal. Not everybody becomes struggles with food, but some people do. And for people that do have a brain addiction, I think it's a relief to realize, I've realized it, like, oh, it's not because I'm like weak or don't have willpower, or it's just biology. It's just plain old biology. Like, it's just like too much, it's basically chemistry. So I yeah, I think that's one reason it's important. And I think the other big reason it's important is that it informs how to break free, which is what the book's about, because we can break free. Like, addictions are not like forever, ever. Somebody just goes into an addiction and is done, right? Like,
Yes.
people can make changes. And it's why I like addiction psychiatry so much. It's why I like working in addictions. Like, when people do make a change and they break free, I just keep using that word, but when they let go of a problem substance of any kind, like, the change can be so beautiful to be around and to like be a part of. And so it's just a really hopeful place. And so people can break free of high sugar ultra processed foods. It's a big thing. It's hard. It's really hard because it's everywhere in our culture, but it's totally, totally doable. And yeah, I mean, I shared this, I think, in the book, but like, I personally, like, back and forth, cookies, no cookies, cookies, no cookies, blah, 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 like craziness. And then when I finally did quit most sugar, it was like night and day. I was like, oh my God, I'm not even thinking about other food now. Like, I don't even think about, like, I don't know, bread is, I mean, I still over thought about bread, but like, I didn't think about bread as much, you know? So for example, so for me, like, yeah, just like letting go of the sugar was like huge. Um,
Totally agree.
yeah.
And that
And the other thing it lends itself to about the neuroscience is that knowing that it's just a kind of an addiction neurochemistry issue is that we can apply all these things that we know work for addiction, like, to food. So people who are struggling, like, we have thousands of articles showing what works to treat addiction. And if we can just like, and that I summarize all these things in the book, all these different therapies, like interventions, like exercise, getting community. I mean, there's all these things that we know work really well for addictions. So we can just apply that to food, and people recover. So I think it's really only a good thing to realize this.
and I love what you said earlier. It is not going to be easy. But we've gotten to a point
Yeah.
whereby we're getting a lot of food and stuff like that and getting addicted. And we know that I think I'm getting addicted to this type of food. We'll be in a position whereby we have to build ourselves and we have to look for ways that we can heal ourselves from this food addiction. And that is why I would like to
Hmm.
dive to the point of recognizing it.
Yeah.
If we do not recognize that we are addicted to a certain food, we won't know the step we will take to heal or recover from this food addiction. So, for someone struggling with unhealthy eating habits, what do you think are some signs that food might be functioning like an addiction rather than a craving? Mrs. Claire.
Yeah, so I think one there's just in my textbook is chapter 8, but like there's so many studies that show that what happens in the brain when you get addicted, like as you go through the process of getting addicted to cigarettes,
Yeah.
say that all those same biological pathways are activated and perpetuated um, with food. So it's like a biochemical change. So like I can kind of talk about some of the different areas, but like so one of the things that um, high sugar food compared to say broccoli or some, non-high sugar foods, um, do is that they trigger dopamine release in the kind of this area of the brain called the striatum. And then what that does is it triggers both, opioid release, which is also associated with pleasure, but it also causes learning and conditioning, whereby basically your the cues associated with in the environment associated with eating a cookie, like for example, the smell of cookies baking or the taste of the cookie in the mouth, become associated with the behavior of eating the cookie. And so essentially it becomes a habit, like just like a habit, like when we have an itch, we scratch it. Like it essentially hardwires the behavior into the brain. So that's step one. Step two is that the more we use something, the more we're down regulating our the more we use something addictive, and this is true for sugar and ultra processed foods too, the more we get used to using it for comfort, like emotional soothing, the more it affects our amygdala and sort of chills us out and makes us feel better. And then we start to just like need it more and more to achieve the same effect. We need it more and more quantities. We need it more and more often, and we go through withdrawal when we stop it. And actually, studies show that sugar withdrawal does exist. It looks a lot like opioid withdrawal. So that starts to happen in the brain. And then number three, it actually, most of the drugs of abuse, like at some level, negatively affect our prefrontal cortex, which is our, so sort of the impulse control centers of our brain and the decision-making centers of our brain and our higher order centers where we make wise decisions for ourselves and, shrink that part of the brain and reduce activation in that part of the brain. And so studies show that actually high sugar foods, overconsumption of that can actually shrink slash reduce functioning of that part of the brain too. So it's just like this chemical effect. Like, so we get in the cycle, but then you remove
Mm.
it um, and you feed the brain. That's the other part of kind of a food addiction recovery plan is you want to feed the brain with good stuff. Like, don't like over restrict calories. Don't go on like, oh my God, I'm going to eat like 300 calories a day or what, crazy stuff that people do. Definitely, you want to eat enough and you want to eat a lot of healthy, lovely, tasty foods, right? Just, but none of the kind of problematic, kind of taking the problematic foods out. And so all of that will sort of reset the brain back to where it was. So you'll start to unlearn those cues. You'll start to not need as much. You'll start to be able to be happy without the sugar in your life. Like, a few months in, you're like, oh, like I feel joy now, like looking at a, aspen leaf and in the sun or something.
Mm.
Whereas before, when you're in an addiction, you don't like enjoy those things as much. So, um, and then your impulse control comes back and you can make better decisions about food. So all of that kind of resets with time, which is really nice. So
And all these things that you said now will honestly take time because when
yeah,
we are addicted to stuff like that, most especially I should say sugar, when something
yeah,
is highly sugared, it always comes back again. You get to a position
yeah,
whereby we want it again and again and again because it is delicious. And if we can get
yeah,
to a position whereby we want to recover from these things that are been that have been programmed in the brain wants it more. If we can solve ourselves, it will definitely take time. It will definitely take more time for us to heal from those addiction that we've brought on ourselves. But if we can heal from that, then we realize that even without this thing I am eating, I am doing good and everything is going fine. Because most especially most of the food that are not even delicious are even the ones that are actually good for the health ourselves. And most of the things we see outside now are something that they want to, they want to make sales and stuff like that. So we have to definitely be more observant on what we eat so that we won't get to a point whereby we get addicted and we want more and more of it. Thank you so much for the beautiful insight, Mrs. Claire. And
Yeah,
also,
thank
I
you.
would like to drive to the point of reframing the mindset around food because our mind too also plays a role. Our brain is there, but we have to play a role when it comes to our mind. Our mind too also tells us, okay, I think I need to go to eat this, but I think I need to eat this food. So, how do you think our listeners can also reframe their mindset around food? So it's not just going to be restriction or willpower, but about healing and balance, Mrs.
Yeah.
Claire.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of one of the key pillars of like the food plan that I lay out in the book, and there's so many. I think flexibility is really a key message that, there is no one, a lot of people want, what do you want? What do I eat? Give me the diet. And it's like, no, 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 there's no one diet. Like there's got to be flexibility so we can make that change and integrate it into our like lives and family and like life is different. Everybody has a different sort of set of foods, but one of the key principles is to eat enough nourishing food and to eat lots of it. And so I strongly encourage because these are foods that are not really probably that addictive, whole foods, so foods in their sort of primary forms, lots of vegetables, lots, fruit oftentimes is can be a little triggering for some, but for many people, it's just like great. It's a beautiful source of yummy, sweet, juicy, and lots of protein. And, so that would be meats or tofu or legumes like beans or chicken or, that kind of stuff, like lots and lots of high protein. Fats are probably pretty darn good. There used to be this thing like, don't eat fat, but like it's probably pretty okay. I think there are some people that have a little bit of an issue with fat, but it's pretty rare for somebody to like, and it all is individual, but it's rare for somebody to, drink a bottle of oil or whatever, like that's by itself,
Mm,
and whole grains, some people end up kind of letting go of carbs, but for me, I definitely like having carbs. I just have to be a little careful with them. And so like whole grains, like rice and, um, quinoa and like I still eat bread and I just don't eat a ton of it, oatmeal, stuff like that. So just and making those so instead of like freaking out like, oh my God, but I eat, 3 candy bars a day and I can't let them go. Like, just be like, okay, like step one is just to like eat more healthy foods. Like, just start there. Let go of the weight loss. It's not that important. It's going to come over time as you make the change, and or not. There's a lot of people with food addiction that really don't need to lose weight at all, and it is a subjective thing. Weight is very much like it can be a problem to the point where it's impacting function and health. But I think this whole idea of like obesity is kind of crazy. Like that line that sort of like you've gone into obesity, like that doesn't make any sense. It's all health and happiness. Um, so yeah, so I think that's kind of where I would recommend people start, and then they can slowly make changes over time.
Thank you so much for this beautiful insight. That shows that we need to eat nourishing food.
Mhm.
Nourishment is the key of us getting more healthy and getting to a point whereby we won't be addicted to some certain food. So we can eat something that are more healthy. And also, we do understand some people because when we say nourishment, most especially nourishment, or when we say nourish food, could be more expensive, could be more way down when it comes to finances. And that is why we have some kind of spaces. We could use our backyard because I do it well. Go to your backyard, you plant things there, you take care of animals there, then you use that to take care of yourself. Those two also help the finances because we are now rearing animals and we're also uprooting what is around us in our community. So we can use that to help ourselves along the way. But nourishment is one of the key for us to be more healthy and to get to a point whereby we won't be addicted to some certain food, which we do not want to get into, to be honest. And also, I would like to dive to a point
Yeah.
community, accountability. Because in this life that we are, when things are happening like this, they'll be like, no, it's the government's fault. They should be the one to take care of all the situation. They should be the one to not make things like this to be here. They should be the one to not let this to be house. You know, understand? So, what do you think, in your opinion, or role do you think community or accountability play
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
overcoming food traps? And
Yeah.
how do you think the listeners can also find support that works for them, Mrs. Claire?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, and I want to say one thing, just like circling back to the nourishment that I
Okay.
forgot to say, is that the studies are a lot of neuroscience, science shows that starvation, so like not having enough calories or starvation actually fuels all the addictive circuitry. So going on a diet again, like restricting calories, it can be, I mean, in the end, like a lot of people want to lose weight when they have a food addiction because they have extra weight, but like making that lower on the list of things, and not restricting calories, because the more you restrict calories, the more the addiction circuitry flares, the more the cravings come in, the more obsessions come in. So all those circuits that I talked about, like all that stuff gets activated more. So, um, yeah, community is huge, right? Like for me, it's been essential. I feel like part of what is challenging with any addiction is the thinking that, well, maybe I can just have one cookie, or no, food isn't addictive. Like, I don't have a problem. Those rationalizations, like once you make a decision to make a change in something, then the rationalizations come back in and sort of derail us. And so, having the community around to remind you, like, oh, actually, like this is, and seeing inspiration in other people who have made a change, like, letting go of sugar or whatever. And they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better and life is happier and my, I have family's better, whatever. That this, lights people up. And when you're around that sort of energy, it can remind you and be inspiring. So I think that's one really big part of community that is powerful. And then the other powerful part of community is the support. So I think, we can just if we feel alone, isolated, shameful, we're gonna have our brains are gonna be like much more likely to crave because we're gonna be in that unhappy space and we're gonna want sugar to feel better. But if we're surrounded by people that support us and are part of us and listen to us and validate us and things like that, then yeah, like we just our brains are happier and we're happier and we don't really need those chemicals to feel better. So I find, and they actually show, like studies show that, for example, and 12 step isn't the only thing, but a lot of people use like AA and 12 step and Overeaters Anonymous and things like that. But that 12 step programs reduce improve mood and reduce depression, and that's the mechanism by which they help people stay sober. So, for example, so it's just like support, like by improving mood and making people happy, it's help facilitating change. So, yeah.
Community is beautiful, to be honest with you,
It-
because these are situations whereby we do know that when we have community, they'll be the one to let us know. I think you are getting addicted with this thing. I think you are getting to a point whereby you are taking a lot of this thing. They caution us and they show the kind of care and support. And that is why we also need to, get engaged and also help ourselves in one way or the other when it comes to community and also finding support in one way or the other. And I would also like to drive back to your book, Rewire Your Food Addicted Brain. If there is one thing you think you can take from that book or lesson you can take on that book, what do you think it will be? And also, if someone is listening right now and they feel very, very overwhelmed about where
Mhm.
to start, where do I start? Because I do not know. I have ate all this type of sweet, sweet. Where do I start? What do you think is one small, realistic first step they can take today towards healthier eating and living well, Mrs. Claire?
Yeah. boy, I keep coming back to this, but eating lots and lots of nourishing, healthy food, making that a priority. I love your idea of having the garden in the back. And by the way, you mentioned other book ideas. I think a book idea would be like something to make it more accessible. Like how do you make good food more accessible to different communities and different cultures and different, I mean, I just think it would be such an exciting thing because yeah, it is expensive. It's much more expensive to eat, Whole Foods, unfortunately, which is crazy. It's crazy that it's that way. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So eating enough healthy food is one thing. And then I think the other one is just, take it easy, be kind to yourself, like, learn. Like one of the tools is for breaking free of the cues in the environment is to identify the cues that trigger you, right? So just get to know yourself a little bit. Like maybe like, oh, every time that I get in a fight with every time I hang out with this friend, I want to go home and overeat sugar. Well, maybe, maybe there's something going on in that relationship that needs to be worked on. Or every time I walk into this room at work where everybody always brings food, that's when I have cravings. Well, maybe you start, just not walking into that room. So you start to identify those things that trigger the cravings and kind of work away from them. So
which
those are
is
two real simple things.
which is so beautiful. We need to be observant with where we go to, what we do, what really triggers us to go back to that point whereby we want to go back to eat things that we are already addicted to. So when we are observant to see those things, those little things that we do, or things that make us upset in some ways to make us go back to that track, then we can know how to also solve it from there because we have to go through the roots. It is through the roots we are going to know how to solve the situation. And as you said earlier, nourishment, eating nourished food, which is probably not easy in some ways for some people and some people, but we do know how to take care of our surrounding and also take care of the nature that we have around us, taking care of the backyard and all those things to also help us, support us to eat nourishing food to help us survive longer. Because majority of what we have out there is not easy. It's just tough. And we need to make this thing. That is why it is the beauty of what you are doing to make people understand that these things are really existing and we need to also work on ourselves to not get through this track and hit things that will make us more healthier so we won't be obese or gaining too much weight that will live an unhealthy life. Also, Mrs. Claire, there is a question I normally ask during the end of the show, Mrs. Claire. From our forefathers, from our ancestors, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our ancestral time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mrs. Claire, what do you think that thing will be, Mrs. Claire?
Hmm, that's a beautiful question. It's a hard question. I'm doing a creative writing program right now at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so most of the people are Native American, and many of them call on ancestral wisdom for inspiration. And I, I don't know. I mean, for me, I have a hard time coming from my culture of being a white, American, kind of knowing how to answer that question. But I guess for me, the answer is I find a lot of sort of inspiration and insight from nature and from my dogs and from love within family and friends. So I just feel like as I've gotten less addicted, those things have become more and more important and valuable and grounding for me and sort of like guiding. And so I don't really know how to exactly what to say, but you know, maybe the way to answer that question is getting rid of the addiction is so worth it in the end because then you get to really like touch into like find out you get to hear from your ancestor. Maybe that's the answer. You get to hear the ancestral wisdom a lot more strongly when you're not caught up in an addiction. And I really have felt that myself. Like the more I've moved away from addictive living, easier it's been to just sort of like tap into what's around me. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Definitely answers it. And I also love the lifestyle, living a lifestyle that really helps us grow and also helps us to be in a position whereby we don't feel a track whereby we'll be addicted to things that we are not really comfortable with. And as you
yeah,
said, living a life of community, having a loving family, having a loving animal that we could care for, things that really gives us that love, that gives us that attention, really helps us. And that is why we have a world whereby it is really isolated, which is a huge issue currently now. Because when someone is isolated for a week, 2 weeks, a month, then stuff starts to come in. Some thinking that are not meant to be coming in will start to come in. And that is where we find a situation whereby one is addicted in one way or the other. But we have to try
yeah,
our best to come out, join society, and be among people so that we won't be in position whereby we get addicted to a food that we take in and we realize whereby we gain weight, we start to get obese. We want to be in a position whereby we are healthy, eating nourishing food, food that will help us healthy, help us grow, help us stay happy. Because there's a difference between staying alive and happy and staying alive and suffering, to be honest. Because someone can be
so true.
alive and someone just constantly falls sick and sick and sick. That is not the life
Yeah.
we want to live. We want to live a life whereby we are alive and we are happy and we're living cool and well. From the bottom of my heart, I also want to use this opportunity to thank you for the opportunity on speaking on this important topic because food is something that is very essential to every single one on earth. For us to survive, we need to eat. Thank you so much, Mrs. Claire.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All
Thank
right,
you for having.
all right. So have a wonderful day, Mrs. Claire. Bye bye.
Bye. It was great to meet you. Bye.